A perfect day. A perfect life. Amelia waited years for this baby shower, a celebration of the miracle child she and her husband, Mark, were finally having after a painful journey through IVF. Surrounded by pastel balloons and loving family, she felt like her world was complete. But a single guest, uninvited and unwelcome, was about to shatter that perfection. What started with a cruel taunt from her husband's mistress would end with a DNA test, hidden inside a grandmother's gift, that would expose a lie so profound it would tear two families apart and redefine the very meaning of the word mother. The late August sun streamed through the large bay windows of Amelia and Mark's pristine suburban home, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny golden fairies. For Amelia, they might as well have been. Everything felt magical, blessed, and finally, right. Her hand rested instinctively on the pronounced curve of her stomach, a protective gesture that had become second nature over the last 7 months. Inside, her daughter Lily kicked gently, as if in agreement. This baby shower was more than a party. It was a testament to resilience. 5 years, 2 miscarriages, 3 failed rounds of IVF that had scraped their finances and their souls raw. Mark had been her rock, holding her through sobbing nights and injecting hormones with a steady hand when hers trembled too much. He was a successful financial consultant, a man who navigated volatile markets with a cool head, and he'd applied that same calm certainty to their fertility journey. "We'll get there, Amy," he'd murmur, his voice a balm on her frayed nerves. "Our family is worth the fight." And they had gotten there. This 4th round, the one they'd called their final attempt, had worked. The 2 pink lines on the test had felt like a hallucination, the ultrasound heartbeat a thunderous miracle. Today, their garden was a sea of pink and white. Balloons shaped like clouds bobbed in the gentle breeze. A 3-tiered cake, adorned with delicate sugar flowers, sat as the centerpiece on a long table laden with macarons, finger sandwiches, and fruit tarts. Amelia's mother, Sarah, a woman whose own life had been a series of quiet battles gracefully won, was fussing over the placement of the gift table, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy every time she looked at her daughter. Mark's mother, Eleanor, was a different kind of presence, a woman of quiet intensity and unnerving perception. She sat in a wicker chair in the shade, observing the proceedings with a placid smile that never quite reached her piercing blue eyes. Eleanor wasn't one for effusive displays of emotion, but her approval was a bedrock. She had gifted them a significant sum for the miracle round of IVF, a gesture of faith that had touched Amelia deeply. "You look radiant, darling," Mark said, coming up behind Amelia and wrapping his arms around her waist, nuzzling his chin into her shoulder. He smelled of expensive cologne and the faint, crisp scent of success. He was handsome in that classic, reliable way. Strong jaw, kind eyes, a smile that could disarm anyone. "Our little girl is being celebrated in style." "It's perfect," Amelia sighed, leaning back against his chest. "Absolutely perfect. Thank you for all of this." "Anything for my 2 girls," he said, placing a kiss on her temple. Friends and family mingled, their laughter the soundtrack to Amelia's happiest day. Her best friend, Jessica, handed her a glass of sparkling cider. "To the strongest woman I know," Jessica toasted, her eyes welling up. "You deserve every bit of this happiness, Amy." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat. She did deserve it. They both did. They had fought, they had bled, they had prayed for this. The world finally seemed to be paying them back with interest. Eleanor watched her son and daughter-in-law from across the lawn. She saw the perfect picture they made. She saw Mark's loving smile, the adoring way he looked at his wife. But Eleanor had lived long enough to know that the most beautiful canvases could hide the deepest cracks. For the past few months, she'd noticed things. A slight edginess to Mark when his phone buzzed, a few too many late nights at the office that didn't quite add up, an expensive-looking scarf in the passenger seat of his car that wasn't Amelia's style. She had dismissed them as the imaginings of an overprotective mother-in-law. Mark loved Amelia. He had moved heaven and earth to have this child with her. And yet, a tiny, cold knot of apprehension had taken root in her gut, a feeling she couldn't shake. She hoped today, seeing the unadulterated joy on Amelia's face, would finally dissolve it. As Mark excused himself to greet new arrivals, Eleanor's gaze followed him. She saw him check his phone, a flicker of something, annoyance, panic, crossing his face before he quickly smoothed it into a welcoming smile for Amelia's aunt. The cold knot in Eleanor's stomach tightened. The day was perfect. The sun was warm, the garden was beautiful, and the air was filled with love. But a storm was gathering just over the horizon, and only one person in the entire party could feel the change in the air. The party was in full swing. The gift table was overflowing with beautifully wrapped boxes, tiny outfits, and stuffed animals. Amelia was seated in the guest of honor chair, a comfortable armchair they'd brought out from the living room, feeling like a queen surveying her loving kingdom. The air was thick with warmth and genuine affection. That's when she saw her. A woman stood at the edge of the patio, framed by the rose trellis. She was the antithesis of the party's soft, pastel theme. She wore a tight black dress that hugged a figure that was toned and athletic. Her hair was a severe, platinum blonde bob, and her lips were painted a slash of defiant red. Sunglasses hid her eyes, but her posture screamed arrogance. Amelia didn't know her, but she felt an immediate, primal sense of wrongness. This woman did not belong here. Heads began to turn. The light chatter dwindled as a ripple of confusion spread through the guests. Mark, who was laughing with a colleague near the barbecue, froze mid-sentence. The color drained from his face, replaced by a ghastly, chalky pallor. In that split second of pure, undisguised panic on her husband's face, Amelia's perfect day began to fracture. The woman in black sauntered forward, her heels clicking ominously on the flagstones. She removed her sunglasses, revealing cold, assessing eyes. She scanned the crowd with a dismissive air before her gaze landed, with predatory focus, on Amelia. "Well, well," the woman said, her voice carrying across the now silent garden. "This is all very sweet. The doting wife, the adoring family. It's a lovely little fantasy you've built, Mark." Every eye swiveled from the woman to Mark, who looked like a trapped animal. "Chloe," he choked out, his voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here? You can't be here." "Oh, I think I can," Chloe replied, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. She walked directly towards Amelia's chair, stopping just before it. She looked down at Amelia, her eyes raking over the swollen belly, the happy glow now extinguished and replaced with a dawning horror. "So, this is the miracle, baby," Chloe sneered, her tone dripping with condescension. "The one you spent a fortune on. The little IVF project." Amelia felt the blood rush in her ears. She looked at Mark, her eyes pleading for an explanation, for him to make this nightmare stop. He just stood there, paralyzed. Amelia's mother, Sarah, stepped forward. "I'm sorry, who are you? I think you have the wrong house." Chloe let out a short, sharp laugh. "Oh no, I have exactly the right house. And the right man." She turned her smirk back to Amelia. "You see, while you were busy with doctors and needles, playing the long-suffering martyr, Mark needed a real woman. Someone who could give him what he wanted, without all the medical intervention. The collective gasp from the guests was like a physical blow. Jessica moved to stand beside Amelia's chair, a protective hand on her shoulder. "Get out," Jessica said, her voice shaking with rage. But Chloe was on a roll, her performance building to its crescendo. "He told me all about it. How sad it was. How you couldn't, perform your most basic function. It must be so hard knowing you're broken." Tears streamed down Amelia's face, hot and silent. The cruelty was surgical, precise, designed to inflict the maximum amount of pain. "That's enough, Chloe." Mark finally found his voice, striding forward. He grabbed her arm. "We'll talk about this later." "No," Chloe said, wrenching her arm free. "We'll talk about it now. I'm tired of being the secret. I'm tired of waiting in the wings while she gets to play house." She placed a hand on her own stomach, a stomach that, to Amelia's horror, showed a small but definite bump beneath the tight black fabric. "I don't think it's fair that only one of Mark's babies gets a party," Chloe announced to the stunned crowd, "because I'm pregnant too, 12 weeks, and there was no intervention needed for this one. This one's all natural, all Mark." The world tilted on its axis. The pastel balloons seemed to mock her, the cheerful decorations a grotesque backdrop to the demolition of her life. She looked from Chloe's triumphant, smug face to her husband's ashen, guilty one. There was no denial, no outrage. Just the silent, damning confirmation of a man caught in a lie of his own making. Eleanor, who had remained silent and still in her wicker chair, now rose to her feet. Her face was a mask of cold fury, her blue eyes like chips of ice. She walked slowly, deliberately, toward the center of the drama. She didn't look at Chloe. Her gaze was fixed entirely on her son. "Mark," she said, her voice low and lethally calm, "is what this woman's saying true?" Mark couldn't meet his mother's eyes. He stared at the ground, a fallen idol of clay. His silence was the loudest confession of all. The baby shower was over. Amelia's perfect day had ended in a public execution of her marriage, her dignity, and her heart. As friends and family shuffled away in awkward, horrified silence, Amelia was left sitting in her throne of honor, surrounded by the wreckage of a sun-drenched lie, the cruel laughter of a mistress echoing in the ruins. The aftermath was a silent, suffocating fog. The guests evaporated, leaving half-eaten plates and wilting decorations behind, like the remnants of a battlefield. Sarah and Jessica cleared everything away with a quiet, furious efficiency, their movements sharp and protective, shielding Amelia from the physical evidence of her shattered happiness. Mark tried to talk to her, his words a desperate, clumsy cascade of excuses and minimization. "Amy, please, she's unhinged. She wasn't supposed to come here." "She's exaggerating. It wasn't what it looks like. It meant nothing. It was just a mistake, a stupid mistake. You and the baby are my life." Amelia sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the wall. His words were just noise, the meaningless buzzing of a fly. She didn't scream or cry or throw things. The shock had hollowed her out, leaving behind a cold, desolate calm. The man she had trusted, the man who had held her hand through every painful procedure, had been living a double life. The late nights and the business trips now replayed in her mind, recast in a sinister, new light. Every memory of his support during their IVF journey was now tainted, poisoned by the knowledge that he was leaving her side to go to another woman's bed. Her mother, Sarah, finally had enough. "Mark, get out," she said, her voice trembling with a rage Amelia had never seen from her before. "Leave her alone. You've done enough damage for one day. Get out of this house." He looked stunned, as if he couldn't comprehend that his usual charm wasn't working. After a moment's hesitation, he left, the click of the front door echoing the finality of it all. In the days that followed, a quiet war began. Mark bombarded her with texts and calls, filled with apologies and promises. He sent flowers, which Amelia immediately threw in the trash. He was fighting to preserve his perfect life, the one with the respectable wife, the beautiful home, and the miracle baby on the way. Chloe, he explained, was a mistake he was handling. Eleanor, however, was fighting a different war. She was a silent general, gathering intelligence. 2 days after the party, she came to the house. She didn't offer platitudes or hugs. She brought a pot of homemade chicken soup and a look of grim determination. "How are you, Amelia?" she asked, her tone gentle but direct. "I don't know," Amelia answered honestly, her voice raspy. "I feel erased." "You are not erased," Eleanor stated, her voice firm. "You are the mother of my grandchild. That is a fact that will not change." She sat opposite Amelia at the kitchen table. "Mark is a fool. He is my son, and I love him. But he is a fool who has been led by his own vanity. I have seen it before with his father." The admission hung in the air, a rare glimpse into Eleanor's own past. "Men like Mark," she continued, her eyes distant. "They want the perfect painting to hang on the wall. The loving wife, the beautiful child. But they also want the thrill of a back-alley sketch. They think they can have both. That one doesn't cheapen the other. They are wrong." Eleanor's visits became a quiet ritual. She never pushed Amelia to make a decision about Mark. Instead, she watched, she listened, and she gathered information. She hired a private investigator, a discreet professional she had used once before, decades ago. The report came back within a week, and it was clinical and brutal. Mark had been seeing Chloe, a junior marketing associate at a rival firm, for nearly a year. He had rented a small, chic apartment for her downtown. He paid her car note. The timeline was damning. Their affair had been in full swing during the most grueling months of Amelia and Mark's last IVF cycle. While Amelia was injecting herself with hormones that left her bloated and emotional, Mark was finding his release elsewhere. The report also contained details about Chloe. She had a history of dating wealthy, married men. She was ambitious and ruthless. The investigator noted that she had recently been overheard in a bar, bragging that she had finally hit the jackpot and was about to secure her future. Eleanor read the report in her car, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The betrayal was deeper than she had imagined. It wasn't just a fling. It was a calculated long-term deception. And now, this woman was claiming to be pregnant. Eleanor, a pragmatist to her core, knew that a baby was the ultimate anchor, the ultimate claim. She knew her son. He was weak. In the face of 2 pregnant women, he would likely try to placate both, creating a tangled, miserable future for everyone involved, especially for the innocent children. Eleanor would not allow that to happen. She would not let Amelia and her grandchild be tethered to this woman for the rest of their lives. Doubt, cold and sharp, pierced through her anger. Chloe seemed too sure of herself, too triumphant. Was it possible Mark was being played? Or was he simply a willing fool? Either way, the truth had to be brought into the light. Not Mark's version of the truth, or Chloe's, but the unvarnished, biological truth. Her mind, sharp and strategic, began to formulate a plan. It would be audacious, and it would need to be handled with the utmost care. She couldn't simply demand a DNA test. Mark would refuse, and Chloe would use it as further proof of their persecution. No, this had to be done quietly, without their knowledge. It had to be a gift that would either confirm the devastating new reality or expose a lie and give Amelia the weapon she needed to reclaim her life. The quiet war was about to escalate, and Eleanor was preparing the final, decisive strike. A week later, Eleanor arrived at Amelia's house, carrying a large, flat, beautifully wrapped gift box, tied with a simple white satin ribbon. The house was still unnervingly quiet. Mark had finally stopped calling, cowed into silence by a single, terrifying phone call from his mother, the contents of which Eleanor never shared. Amelia looked exhausted. The radiant glow of pregnancy had been replaced by a weary pallor, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She was still in her pajamas at 2 p.m, the television murmuring in the background. "I brought you something," Eleanor said, her voice soft. "I was going to save it for after Lily was born, but I think you might need it now." Amelia looked at the large box without much interest. "Eleanor, you don't have to." "I want to," she insisted, placing the box on the coffee table. "Open it." With listless fingers, Amelia pulled at the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, was the most beautiful quilt she had ever seen. It was a masterpiece of needlework, a mosaic of soft, muted colors: rose pink, lavender, sage green, and cream. Each square was intricately stitched with delicate patterns: tiny sleeping lambs, crescent moons, blossoming flowers, and in the very center, a beautiful, sprawling tree with 2 names lovingly embroidered on the trunk: Amelia and Lily. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the love woven into every single stitch palpable. Despite the coldness in her heart, Amelia felt a flicker of warmth. It was a true family heirloom. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her fingers tracing the embroidered letters of her daughter's name. "It's a family tradition," Eleanor explained, sitting beside her. "My grandmother made one for my mother. My mother made one for me. And I made this for you." "For you and Lily?" She paused, her gaze intent. "A family is like a quilt, Amelia. It's made of many different pieces, stitched together by love and by truth. But sometimes the threads can get tangled. Sometimes a thread from another cloth gets woven in by mistake or by malice, and if you don't find that foreign thread and pull it out, it can unravel the whole thing." Amelia looked up, confused by the strange, intense metaphor. Eleanor reached forward and gently touched a small, discreet pocket sewn into the quilt's border, camouflaged amongst the patterns. "The most important things are often hidden," she said cryptically. "They require you to look closer, to make sure every thread truly belongs." She then stood up. "I have an appointment. You rest, my dear, and look after my granddaughter." After Eleanor left, Amelia sat with the quilt for a long time, the soft fabric draped over her lap. It felt like a shield. She ran her hand over it again, her fingers brushing against the hidden pocket Eleanor had pointed out. Curiosity piqued. She felt inside. Her fingers closed around a thick, crisp envelope. She pulled it out. It was a simple manila envelope with no name on it. Her heart began to beat a little faster. With trembling hands, she unfastened the clasp and tipped the contents onto the cushion beside her. 3 small, sealed boxes slid out. Amelia stared at them, her blood turning to ice. They were DNA paternity test kits. Beneath them was a single folded piece of paper. It was a handwritten note from Eleanor. "My dearest Amelia, I know this is shocking, and I pray you can forgive the clandestine nature of this. I cannot stand by and watch my son's weakness and another woman's ambition destroy the life you are building for my grandchild. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That is a lesson life has taught me well. Mark will lie. That woman will lie, but science does not lie. The first kit is for Chloe. You will need to be clever to get a sample from her. A used glass, a fallen strand of hair. A friend could help. The second kit is for Mark. A toothbrush, a razor, a clipped fingernail. Easier. I have already filled out the paperwork and prepaid for the express processing. All you need to do is get the samples and mail them in the included overnight envelopes. The third kit is for you and for Mark. I know you went through IVF. I know this child is his. But in a war, you must control the battlefield. If Chloe's child is his, you will be faced with an undeniable truth. If her child is not, you need an undeniable truth of your own to silence her and Mark's lies forever. This will be your proof, your final, unassailable defense to protect you and Lily. Whatever the results, you will not be alone. I am with you. With love and resolve, Eleanor Amelia stared at the 3 boxes and the note, her mind reeling. It was audacious. It was terrifying. It was brilliant. Eleanor wasn't just offering sympathy. She was offering ammunition. She was giving Amelia the tools to fight back, to uncover the absolute biological truth in a situation choked with lies. The hollow despair that had filled her for days began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp tendril of anger and a steely sense of purpose. Her mother-in-law had declared war on her behalf. The quilt, this beautiful, loving gift, was a Trojan horse. And inside it was the means to either reclaim her family or burn it to the ground with the cleansing fire of truth. For the first time in weeks, Amelia knew exactly what she had to do. The plan solidified in Amelia's mind, sharp and clear. The passive, heartbroken victim was gone, replaced by a woman with a mission. The first target was Mark. It was sickeningly easy. He was still living in their home, relegated to the guest room, trying to worm his way back into her life with pathetic gestures of remorse. The next morning, after he left for a very important meeting, she walked into the guest bathroom. His toothbrush sat by the sink. Wearing latex gloves, she took it, snipped off the bristles with a pair of scissors, and sealed them in the sample envelope. 1 down. Chloe was the real challenge. Amelia couldn't approach her directly. The woman was venomous and would immediately be suspicious. She needed a proxy. She called Jessica, her voice low and conspiratorial, and explained Eleanor's audacious plan. A DNA test? Hidden in a quilt? Amy, your mother-in-law is a freaking KGB agent. Jessica breathed into the phone, a note of awe in her voice. I love it. What do you need me to do? The plan was risky. Jessica, using a fake name, called the marketing firm where Chloe worked, pretending to be a recruiter from a high-profile headhunting agency. She praised Chloe's impressive public profile and tenacious approach to brand building, citing a recent campaign. She invited her to an informal coffee meeting at a chic downtown cafe to discuss a lucrative and confidential opportunity with a major competitor. Chloe, driven by ego and ambition, took the bait instantly. 2 days later, Jessica sat in the cafe, her heart pounding. Chloe arrived, exuding an air of smug self-importance. She ordered a sparkling water with lemon. Jessica, playing her part, asked insightful questions about Chloe's career, flattering her and letting her talk. As they spoke, Chloe took a sip of her water, then gestured with the glass as she made a point. When the meeting concluded, with Jessica promising to be in touch with a formal offer, Chloe left, leaving the glass, with her lipstick stain on the rim, on the table. Jessica waited until she was out of sight, then calmly took a napkin, picked up the glass, and slipped it into a Ziploc bag in her purse. She messaged Amelia a single word: gotcha. That evening, Amelia laid out all 3 kits on her kitchen island. She swabbed the rim of the glass for Chloe's sample. She already had Mark's. Finally, she took the swab for her own kit. The instructions said a paternal sample was needed for comparison. The second kit, the one Eleanor had labelled "For You and Mark," was already complete with his DNA from the toothbrush. She sealed everything meticulously, her hands steady. The next morning, she drove to the post office and sent the 2 prepaid overnight envelopes to the lab in different states, as Eleanor had arranged. And then, the wait began. The 5 days that followed were the longest of her life. Mark continued his pathetic campaign to win her back, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. He brought her cravings, pickles and ice cream, and talked about their future, about names for Lily, as if the scene in the garden had just been a bad dream. "I've ended it with Chloe," he told her one evening, his expression earnest. "Completely. I told her I want nothing to do with her or her claims. You and Lily are my world. I was a fool to ever risk that." Amelia looked at him, at his handsome, pleading face, and felt nothing but a cold, clinical detachment. She wondered if he was lying about ending it, or if he was simply cutting his losses, discarding the woman who had become an inconvenience. It didn't matter anymore. The truth was in the mail. On the 5th day, an email notification popped up on her phone. "Your results are ready. Case ID after 1. Her breath caught in her throat. This was the first test, Chloe versus Mark. With a trembling finger, she clicked the link and entered the secure password Eleanor had provided. The page loaded, a clinical PDF with charts and percentages. She scrolled down past the scientific jargon to the conclusion at the bottom. Conclusion: the alleged father, Mark Peterson, is not the biological father of the fetus carried by Chloe Jenkins. The probability of paternity is 0%. A wave of dizzying relief washed over her, so potent it made her knees weak. He wasn't the father. Chloe had lied. It was all a monstrous, cruel lie designed to trap him, to destroy Amelia's life out of sheer spite and greed. Mark was still a cheater. He was still a liar who had broken her heart. But this one, horrifying tether to Chloe was severed. Lily would not have a half-sibling born of betrayal. She felt a rush of vindication. She could finally breathe. She printed the document, the black and white letters a declaration of her freedom. Mark was a philanderer, but he wasn't trapped. They could, perhaps, navigate this. The future was still uncertain, but the darkest cloud had just been vaporized. An hour later, a second email arrived. "Your results are ready. Case ID number 2. Amelia frowned. This was the other test, the one Eleanor had called her unassailable defense, the test of her and Mark to prove Lily was his. It felt redundant now, almost silly. But for the sake of completeness, she clicked the link. She entered the password, her earlier giddiness making her feel light and confident. The PDF loaded. She scrolled down to the bottom, expecting to see the 99% confirmation. Instead, she read a sentence that made the entire world stop. Conclusion: the alleged father, Mark Peterson, is not the biological father of the fetus carried by Amelia Peterson. The probability of paternity is 0%. 0%. The number pulsed on the screen. It was impossible. A mistake. The lab must have mixed up the samples. Her mind scrambled for a rational explanation for anything other than the stark, brutal finality of that sentence. This wasn't a lie from a malicious mistress. This was science, cold, impartial, and absolute. Lily, her miracle baby, the child she had fought and bled and prayed for, was not Mark's. The relief she had felt just an hour ago curdled into a new, more profound kind of horror. The floor seemed to fall away, plunging her into a black, soundless void. She sat there, staring at the screen for what could have been minutes or hours. The baby kicked, a lively, insistent thump against her ribs, and a dry, ragged sob escaped Amelia's lips. This child, her child, was a stranger to the man she had called her husband. How? How was this possible? The IVF clinic. It had to be the clinic. They had used donor sperm. They had used the wrong sperm. The thought was so monstrous, so violating, that it was almost unthinkable. Her entire journey, every shot, every procedure, every hopeful prayer had been based on a catastrophic error. The sound of the front door opening jolted her from her paralysis. Mark was home. He walked into the kitchen, a cheerful smile on his face. "Hey you, I was thinking we could order Thai tonight. My treat." He stopped when he saw her face, the smile faltering. "Amy? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Amelia didn't say a word. She simply turned the laptop screen toward him. He leaned in, his brow furrowed in confusion. He read the first line. The alleged father, Mark Peterson. His eyes scanned down, and then his body went rigid. He read the sentence again, his lips moving silently. "What is this? What kind of sick joke is this, Amelia?" "That's the DNA test for me and you," she said, her voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "The one to prove Lily is yours." "It's fake. It has to be," he stammered, his face paling. Did you do something? Is this revenge?" The accusation was so vile, so far beyond the pale, that it finally broke through her shock and ignited a white-hot fury. "Revenge!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You think I would fake this? That I cheated on you? You, who was sleeping with another woman while I was injecting myself with hormones to have your baby. I have been faithful to you every single second of our marriage." She stood up, her body trembling. "But that's not all, Mark." She picked up the other printed document from the counter, the one about Chloe, and shoved it into his chest. "Read this one too." He fumbled with the paper. His eyes darted across the page, and a flicker of something, relief, crossed his face. It's not mine." "No, it's not," Amelia said, her voice dropping to a dangerously low level. "Congratulations. You're free from your mistake. But guess what? It turns out you're free from this one, too." She gestured wildly at her own pregnant belly. "So you get exactly what you deserve. Nothing. No children. No family. Just your lies and your pathetic, empty life." Mark stared at her, his mind clearly struggling to process the two conflicting realities. The mistress's baby wasn't his, but his wife's baby wasn't his either. The perfect life he had been so desperate to salvage was a complete and utter fraud. And then his true nature, stripped of all its charming artifice, revealed itself. The panic and confusion in his eyes hardened into something ugly, resentment, contempt. "So what is this?" he hissed, his voice venomous. "Some cuckoo in the nest? I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I endured years of your crying and your moods. I went through hell for a child, for my child, my legacy. And you're telling me this baby, this thing you're carrying, isn't even mine?" He didn't see a baby anymore. He didn't see their daughter, Lily. He saw a defective product, a broken contract. He saw the result of a monumental error that had nothing to do with him and had ruined his plans. "Get it out," he whispered, his voice shaking with a rage that terrified her. "What?" "Get it out of my house," he said, his voice rising. "I don't know what it is, but it's not mine. I don't want it. I don't want you." The cruelty of his words was the final, fatal blow. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a monster. He didn't love her. He didn't love the child she was carrying. He loved the idea of them, the status they conferred, and when the product was revealed to be not of his making, he wanted it discarded. In that moment, Amelia's heart, which had been broken, shattered, and then numbed, did something remarkable. It began to harden. It forged itself in the fire of his hate into something new, something unbreakable. "This is my house too, Mark," she said, her voice now eerily calm. "But don't worry, I'll be leaving. I am taking my daughter, and I am leaving. And the next time you hear from me will be through my lawyer." She walked past him, leaving him standing in the kitchen with the 2 DNA reports, 2 pieces of paper that had systematically detonated his entire world. He hadn't just lost a wife and a child. He had revealed the utter bankruptcy of his own soul. And Amelia, for the first time, saw him for exactly what he was. And she was finally, truly, free. The days following the implosion were a blur of logistics and legalities. Amelia, with Eleanor's unwavering support, moved into a small, furnished apartment. Eleanor co-signed the lease and hired the most formidable divorce attorney in the city, a woman named Catherine Shaw, who moved with the quiet lethality of a shark. Their first stop, however, was the fertility clinic. Armed with the DNA report, Amelia and Catherine sat across from the clinic's director, a man whose polished, reassuring demeanor quickly crumbled into beads of sweat under Catherine's relentless questioning. An internal investigation was launched immediately. The clinic's mistake was a catastrophe of epic proportions, a human error with devastating consequences. A new lab technician, overwhelmed and improperly supervised, had mixed up 2 vials during the fertilization process. The sperm used to conceive Lily was not Mark's. It belonged to another sample in the lab that day, labeled only with a donor number. The clinic's lawyers immediately offered a massive settlement, a gag order, and a profuse, groveling apology. Amelia, on Catherine's advice, accepted. The money would secure her and Lily's future. But it felt like blood money, a pale compensation for a violation so profound. The question of the biological father haunted her. The clinic, citing donor confidentiality, refused to release any information about him. He was anonymous, a ghost in her daughter's story. Part of her was relieved. Her life was complicated enough. Mark, true to his word, had vanished. He filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, eager to excise this chapter from his life. He made no claim to the child, offered no support. He simply wanted to erase them. The man she had once loved was a complete stranger to her now. 2 months later, Lily was born. She was a beautiful, healthy baby, with a tuft of dark hair and eyes so blue they seemed to hold the sky. Holding her daughter for the first time, Amelia felt a love so fierce and absolute it eclipsed all the pain and betrayal. This was her child, hers alone. The biological details, the clinical errors, the betrayals, they all faded away in the face of this tiny, perfect human. One afternoon, about a month after Lily was born, Eleanor came to visit. She held her granddaughter with a gentle reverence, her stern features softened by love. "Catherine called me," Eleanor said quietly, her eyes fixed on Lily's sleeping face. "There was a development. With the clinic." Amelia's heart clenched. "What is it?" "The investigation uncovered further negligence," Eleanor explained. "The donor whose sample was used. His file was mislabeled. It was not supposed to be an anonymous donation. There was a clerical error." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Because of their gross negligence, the court has allowed for his identity to be revealed to you, should you wish it. They gave Catherine his name." Amelia was torn. Did she want to know? Did she want to invite another stranger into this already tangled story? "Who is it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Eleanor finally looked up from the baby, and her blue eyes were filled with a complex mixture of pain, regret, and a strange, sad irony. "His name is David Peterson." Amelia stared, uncomprehending. "Peterson? Like us?" "Yes," Eleanor said, her voice heavy. "David is Mark's older brother." The room spun. David, Mark's estranged brother, a quiet, gentle man who worked as a university librarian. His wife had died of cancer 5 years ago, the same year Amelia and Mark had started their fertility journey. Amelia had only met him a few times. The brothers were not close, their personalities polar opposites. "How is that possible?" Amelia choked out. "After his wife, Sarah, passed away, David donated sperm," Eleanor explained softly. They had always wanted children but couldn't. He said he wanted to help another family experience that joy, to bring some good from his grief. He thought it was an anonymous donation. He never imagined this. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, and the irony was so staggering, so cosmically cruel, and yet so strangely perfect, that Amelia almost laughed. She had wanted a child with a Peterson. She had gotten one. She had just gotten it from the wrong brother. Mark, in his selfish quest for a biological heir, had been denied one, while his quiet, unassuming brother, who had asked for nothing, had become a father. A week later, David Peterson knocked on her apartment door. He looked older than she remembered, his kind eyes shadowed with grief and bewilderment. He held a small, awkwardly wrapped gift. I don't know what to say," he stammered, his gaze falling on the baby carrier in the living room. "Eleanor told me everything. I am so sorry, Amelia. For your pain. For all of it." "It's not your fault, David," Amelia said, and she meant it. He was as much a victim of circumstance as she was. She invited him in. She let him hold Lily. As he looked down at the tiny baby in his arms, his face a canvas of wonder and sorrow, Amelia didn't feel anger or resentment. She felt a strange sense of peace. The tangled threads of her family quilt had been rewoven into a new, unforeseen pattern. It was not the life she had planned, but it was real, and it was hers. Her family was smaller now, but infinitely stronger. It was her daughter, her fiercely loyal mother, and the formidable woman who was still, in the truest sense of the word, her mother-in-law. And now there was David, a gentle, kind man bound to them by a twist of fate, a man who looked at his daughter with nothing but pure, uncomplicated love. Mark had been erased from their tapestry. The foreign, malicious thread had been pulled, and in its place was something new, something better, something true. 3 years later, the world was a different place. The sharp, jagged edges of the past had been worn smooth by the gentle, relentless tide of toddlerhood. Amelia's apartment, once a sterile refuge, was now a vibrant, chaotic, and joyful home. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating not dust motes, but the faint, sticky residue of a juice box on the floor and a constellation of colorful magnetic letters on the fridge. Today, the scent of vanilla and sugar hung in the air. A small banner spelling out "Happy 3rd Birthday, Lily" was strung crookedly across the living room. Lily herself, a whirlwind of pink tulle and dark curls, was shrieking with delight as David, her father, made a goofy monster face while crawling after her on the floor. Amelia watched them from the kitchen doorway, a soft smile on her face as she placed 3 small candles on a homemade cupcake. The scene was so profoundly normal, so deeply happy, that it sometimes still caught her breath. Her family was a strange and beautiful mosaic, pieced together from the rubble of a demolition. There was David, the quiet librarian who had blossomed into the most patient and doting of fathers. There was her mother, Sarah, setting out a plate of sliced apples, her presence a constant, reassuring warmth. And there was Eleanor, sitting in an armchair with the regal posture of a queen, a small, genuinely happy smile gracing her lips as she watched her granddaughter, her only granddaughter. Their arrangement was unconventional but simple. Amelia and David co-parented, living in separate homes, but sharing a deep and abiding commitment to Lily. They were not partners in a romantic sense. The trauma of Amelia's marriage and the grief of David's loss were landscapes they navigated separately. But they were partners in parenthood, a bond built on mutual respect, open communication, and an immense, shared love for their daughter. He was Daddy David, a fixture in Lily's life from the very beginning. There were no secrets, just a simple truth waiting for her when she was old enough to understand. "Heard from your son lately?" Sarah asked Eleanor in a low voice, a question that carried no malice, only a quiet curiosity that had developed between the two grandmothers. Eleanor's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "I received a Christmas card," she said, her tone clipped. "A photograph. Him and his new wife, Tiffany, on a yacht in the Caribbean. She's an Instagram model, half his age. They have 2 matching golden doodles." Amelia had seen the photos online once, a morbid curiosity getting the better of her. Mark looked the same, handsome, successful, tanned, but his eyes were empty. He was performing a life, not living one. The picture-perfect painting he had so desperately wanted was hanging on a new wall, but the canvas was just as hollow. He had never once asked about Lily. He had signed away any rights, any connection, with the cold efficiency of a business transaction. He had gotten his wish. She was erased from his life. And in doing so, he had erased himself from a world of genuine love. As for Chloe, she had vanished after her lie was exposed, a brief, toxic footnote in their history. Amelia felt nothing for them now. Not anger, not sadness, just a distant, clinical pity. "Well," Sarah said, placing the apples on the coffee table, "I suppose golden doodles are less complicated." Eleanor gave a short, dry laugh. "Indeed." Later, after the cupcake was eaten and the presents were opened, Lily fell asleep in David's arms, exhausted by the excitement. He rocked her gently, his gaze soft. "I was so lost after Sarah died," he said, quietly to Amelia, his voice thick with emotion. "I felt like my life's purpose had just evaporated. I thought donating sperm was a way to put some good back into the world, a little piece of the family we never had. I never imagined." He looked down at his sleeping daughter. "She's not a piece of a family, Amelia. She's the whole thing. You gave me that." "Thank you." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes. "We gave it to each other, David. You're a wonderful father. She's so lucky to have you." The easy gratitude between them was a testament to the life they had built. There was no awkwardness, no obligation, just truth. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Amelia tucked Lily into her bed. Draped over the back of the small toddler bed was the quilt Eleanor had made, its intricate stitching a map of their history. Lily slept with it every night. Amelia traced the embroidered tree in the center, her fingers brushing over the names, Amelia and Lily. It was meant for a different story, a different life. But like them, it had adapted. It had become something new. She thought of the threads, the one of betrayal that she and Eleanor had pulled, severing Mark and Chloe from their lives forever. And she thought of the new threads that had been woven in, David's gentle strength, her mother's unwavering support, Eleanor's fierce loyalty and Lily's bright, vibrant light. The tapestry of her life was not the one she had designed. It was more complex, its patterns more surprising. It was marked by scars and frayed edges, but it was also richer, stronger, and more authentic than anything she could have ever imagined. The sun-drenched lie was a distant memory. Here, in the quiet of her daughter's room, surrounded by love that was earned and true, was the only reality that mattered. In the end, Amelia's story wasn't about the life that was destroyed, but about the one that was built from the ashes. She learned that family isn't always about the picture-perfect life you plan, but about the unexpected bonds forged in truth and adversity. Mark, who craved a legacy, was left with nothing, while Amelia, who had lost everything, found a new, truer family in the most unexpected way. Her daughter Lily, born from a web of lies and a catastrophic mistake, became the beacon of a new beginning, surrounded by the fierce love of a grandmother who would move heaven and earth for her, and the quiet devotion of a biological father she would one day come to know. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most tangled threads weave the most beautiful and resilient tapestries. What did you think of Amelia's incredible journey? Could you ever forgive a betrayal like Mark's? What would you have done if you were in Eleanor's shoes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves a story of strength and survival. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that will leave you speechless. Thank you for listening.